I am 34 years old. I live in Heidelberg, Germany. I have a research position I worked 12 years to earn, a small apartment, and a cat named Rue who sits on my desk every morning while I write. My life is quiet and full and exactly what I chose. And sometimes, when the light comes through my office window at a certain angle, I pick up a photograph I keep in the top drawer of my desk. It is a picture of me at 22 years old, standing alone in a black graduation gown, holding my diploma with both hands. No one is next to me. No one took that picture. A woman I had never met before, a stranger whose daughter had just crossed the same stage, turned to me and said, "Do you want me to take one of you?" I handed her my phone without a word. That photograph is the truest record of that day, and that day is where this story begins. It was a Saturday morning in May 12 years ago. The graduation ceremony for the University of Washington's College of Arts and Sciences was held in the main arena on campus. 5,000 seats. Families had driven in from across the state. Some had flown in from other countries. The air inside that building was warm and loud, and everywhere I looked there were people holding flowers, holding signs, holding each other. I was the student valedictorian that year. I had been told weeks before that I would be the one to give the commencement address on behalf of my entire graduating class. The faculty advisor who delivered the news shook my hand and said, "Your family is going to be so proud." I smiled and said, "Thank you." Before the ceremony started, I stood at the side of the stage and looked out at the reserved section where families of speakers were seated. The organizers had placed small printed name cards on 4 chairs in the second row: Dad, Mom, Grandpa Vaughan, and Declan. 3 of those 4 chairs were empty. The only sign of life near those seats was a brown wool jacket draped carefully over the chair labeled Grandpa Vaughan. He had made it partway. He just had not made it inside yet. When my name was called and I walked to the podium, I looked out at 5,000 people and delivered a 12-minute speech I had written and rewritten 11 times. My voice did not shake. My hands did not tremble. I said everything I had prepared to say, and I said it clearly. While I was standing at that podium, my parents were at home on their couch. They were hosting a Super Bowl viewing party for their friends. There were drinks and food and a live stream running on the television. My mother had posted on Facebook that morning, "So proud of both our kids this year." She got 47 comments. Not one of them was from me. After the ceremony, a professor walked up to me near the exit and asked if she could take a photo with me. She said, "Your family must be so proud." I told her I was sure they were. Then I walked out into the afternoon light alone and called an Uber. Before I go any further, if you are watching this right now, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I want to know. And if this story is already hitting something real for you, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because what I am about to tell you goes so much deeper than one missed graduation. This is the story of 12 years. This is the story of how I disappeared from my family's life, and why I have never once regretted it. Stay with me. To understand what that morning meant, you have to understand the 4 years that came before it. When I was 18 and received my acceptance letter to the University of Washington, my parents sat me down at the kitchen table and explained that the family could not help with tuition. My father said it plainly. They did not have the money to spare. I accepted that. I applied for every scholarship the financial aid office listed, and I got enough to cover most of my first year. For the rest, I found a job at a coffee shop 2 blocks from campus, working closing shifts 4 nights a week. 3 weeks after that conversation, my brother Declan, who was 16 at the time and had just started showing interest in music, mentioned that he wanted to learn electric guitar. My father drove him to a music store the following Saturday and bought him a brand new Gibson electric guitar. The price tag was $1,200. Nobody asked me how my first week of college was going. I want to be clear about something. I did not hate Declan for that. He was a teenager. He did not set the rules, but I noticed it. I filed it away quietly, the way you do when something does not quite make sense yet, but you know it will matter later. By my 2nd year, I had added a second job. I started tutoring high school students on weekends, charging $30 an hour. Between the tutoring and the coffee shop and my scholarship, I was covering rent on a small off-campus room, buying my own groceries and paying for my textbooks. I bought ramen noodles in bulk every month because they were the most calories per dollar I could find. I was not struggling dramatically. I was just doing the math every single week and making sure it added up. That same year, my parents organized a birthday trip for Declan. He was turning 17. They flew him and 3 of his friends to Miami for a long weekend. First-class seats, a hotel on the beach. My mother called me the week before the trip to tell me about it, and at the end of the call she asked, almost as an afterthought, if I wanted to come home for Declan's birthday dinner before they left. I had a closing shift that night. I said I could not make it. She said, "That's okay, honey," and that was the end of that. In my third year, I took on a third job. I started working part-time at a used bookstore on weekends, shelving and helping at the register. The extra income was small, but it covered the gap when my tutoring schedule thinned out during exam weeks. That same year, I was offered a position as a research assistant to a linguistics professor named Dr. Aldrich Voss. The pay was modest, but Dr. Voss was exacting and brilliant, and working with him taught me more in one semester than I had learned in 2 full years of coursework. He was the one who first said to me, after reading a paper I had submitted, "You think in a way that belongs in a research institution. You should know that." Nobody in my family had ever said anything like that to me. Around that same time, my parents hired a personal trainer for Declan. He was going through a phase where he felt self-conscious about his appearance and they wanted to build his confidence. $600 a month. When my mother mentioned it on a phone call, she added, "Do you need anything, Ilara?" I told her I needed about $200 for textbooks that semester. There was a pause, and then she said she would have to check the budget and let me know. She never followed up. By my 4th year, I had been working 3 jobs simultaneously for over 18 months without taking a single week off. I had also, in that time, produced my first independent research paper under Dr. Voss's supervision. It was a 30-page analysis of language acquisition patterns in multilingual households, and Dr. Voss submitted it on my behalf to a graduate-level academic journal. When it was accepted for publication, I cried alone in my room for about 10 minutes, then went to my shift at the bookstore. I sent the paper to my parents. I emailed it with a short note that said, "I just want you to read it, just once." My father replied 11 days later. His message said, "Looks good, honey. We're busy with Declan's tournament this week." Declan had entered a local amateur tennis tournament. He lost in the first round. My parents rented a car and drove the whole family to cheer him on all 3 days of competition. At the end of my final semester, the university confirmed that I had earned the highest GPA in my graduating class. I would be delivering the commencement address. I sent a message to the family group chat. My mother replied with a heart emoji. My father replied with a thumbs up. Declan did not reply at all. My grandfather, Vaughan, called me within the hour. He was 80 years old that year, a retired civil engineer who lived alone in a house outside the city. He called me on his landline because he still did not fully trust his mobile phone for important calls. He said, "Ilara, I want you to hear this from me directly. I am more proud of you than I know how to say." He paused, then added, "I have watched you do this entirely on your own, and I need you to know that I have noticed every single step." Grandpa Vaughan sent me cards in the mail throughout my 4 years of college. They were small cards, sometimes with a $20 bill tucked inside and a note that said, "For real food, not ramen." He came to every event he could reach by car. He was the only one who did. He was the only person in my family who made me feel like what I was doing was real and worth doing. The night before graduation, I packed up the last of my things in my dorm room. I had already sent 2 boxes home via shipping service, and the rest fit into 2 suitcases. I had no plans for where I was going after the ceremony. I had not accepted any job offers yet. I had 1 interview scheduled for the following week and 2 more pending responses. Everything felt suspended, waiting. At 9 in the evening, I called my mother. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I called back, same result. On my 4th attempt, my father picked up. I could hear music in the background and voices and the sound of something being poured into a glass. He said, "Ilara, can you call back in a little while? We have company right now." I said okay, and I hung up. I called Declan next. He picked up on the second ring, which surprised me. I heard the television in the background and what sounded like a video game. I said, "Hey, I just wanted to make sure you guys were all still planning to come tomorrow." He said, "Oh yeah, graduation. Right, cool. Hey, I actually have to go." And he ended the call. I sat on the edge of my bare mattress for a moment. Then I called Grandpa Vaughan. He picked up on the first ring. He told me his alarm was already set for 6 in the morning, that he had ironed his good shirt and that he was planning to leave early to get a seat near the front. He said, "I would not miss this for anything on this earth, Ilara." I held the phone and did not say anything for a few seconds. He said, "Are you all right?" I told him I was. I told him I just wanted to make sure someone was coming. He said, I will be there, however many miles it takes. I slept a few hours and woke up at 6. I dressed alone in my empty room. I put on my graduation gown over a white blouse and dark trousers. I adjusted the cap in the mirror the best I could. I took a single photo of myself to document the outfit, the way people do before a job interview or a first day of something. Then I walked to the arena. At 8:15 my phone rang. It was Grandpa Vaughan. He was on Interstate 5 stuck behind a multi-car accident that had closed 2 lanes. Traffic was completely stopped. He said, I am trying, Ilara. I am sitting here and I am trying to figure out if there is another way. His voice was tight in a way I had never heard from him before. I told him it was fine, that he did not need to strain himself, that I understood completely. He said, no, I will get there. I am sorry, Ilara. The ceremony began at 9. By 9:45, when I approached the podium, the 4 reserved seats in the second row looked like this. The chair labelled Dad was empty. The chair labelled Mom was empty. The chair labelled Declan was empty. The chair labelled Grandpa Vaughan had his brown wool jacket laid across the seat, placed there by an usher who had held it for him at the door when he called ahead to say he was on his way. I delivered my address to 5,000 people. I spoke about the distance between where you start and where you choose to go. I spoke about the work that no one witnesses. I did not cry. I did not falter. When I finished, the applause was long, and a professor in the front row stood up first, and then others followed. At 10:20, Grandpa Vaughan came through the side entrance of the arena. His jacket was still unbuttoned. His face was flushed from walking fast. He found me in the crowd near the exit, moving through people with his hand raised so I could see him. When he reached me, he put both arms around me and held on. He said into my hair, I am so sorry. I am so sorry I was not in that seat. That was when I cried. Not before, not during the speech. Right then, standing in a crowd of families, held by the one person who drove 2 hours in stopped traffic to try to make it. We found a quiet table at a small restaurant near the campus. He ordered us both a full meal, the kind with a main course and everything that came with it. We did not talk about my parents. We did not need to. He just sat across from me and ate and listened when I talked and did not fill the silence with anything it did not need. After lunch, Grandpa Vaughan drove me back to the dorms to pick up my suitcases. I loaded them into the back of his car, and he offered to drive me to wherever I needed to go next. I had booked an Uber to take me to a friend's apartment where I was staying for a few days before figuring out my next move. I hugged him goodbye at the curb, and he held my face in his hands for a second before letting go. He said, you call me whenever you need to, day or night. I told him I would. In the Uber, I set my bag on my lap and reached inside to find my phone charger. My hand touched something else first, a thick envelope, navy blue, slightly stiff. I had put it there 3 days before and had not opened it. The return address on the front read, Office of International Education, University of Washington. I had been aware for 8 months that Dr. Voss had submitted a nomination on my behalf for a Fulbright scholarship. He had told me plainly that he could not promise anything, and I had told myself not to count on it, and I had gotten very good at not counting on things. I opened the envelope in the back seat of a stranger's car, on a Saturday afternoon in May, still in my graduation gown. The letter informed me that I had been selected for the Fulbright Scholar Program. The placement was a research fellowship at the University of Heidelberg in Germany, in the Department of Linguistics and Language Studies. The duration was 2 years. The award covered tuition, living expenses, health insurance, and round-trip airfare. The total value of the award, when converted to dollar terms at the time of the letter, was listed as exceeding $500,000. I read the letter from the first word to the last. Then I set it down on my knee and looked out the window at the highway. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror and said, "Good news." I said, "Yes, really good news." That evening I called Dr. Voss from the floor of my friend's living room. He answered immediately. He said, "I know, I have known for 3 weeks. I wanted you to open it yourself." He had been sitting on that information since before my graduation, waiting for me to find it. He said, "Ilara, every dollar of that award has your name on it because you earned it. Every single one." I thanked him, and when we hung up, I stayed on the floor for a long time, not moving, not calling anyone else. That same evening, my mother posted a new photo on Facebook. It was a picture taken at the Super Bowl party. She and my father were holding red plastic cups, laughing at the camera. The caption read, "So proud of both our kids this year. Declan just made the varsity tennis team and Ilara graduated today." The post got 112 likes. Several people commented congratulations to Ilara. My mother replied to each of those with a heart emoji. She did not know that her daughter, at that same moment, was sitting on a floor in Seattle, holding a letter that would take her 4,000 miles away and not bring her back. The only person I called that night other than Dr. Voss was Grandpa Vaughan. I told him about the Fulbright. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said in a voice that was slower and more deliberate than usual, "You deserve this more than anyone I know." He did not say anything dramatic after that. He did not need to. I did not call my parents. I did not send a text. For the first time in 22 years, I had something that was entirely mine, and I held it close for a little while before letting the world touch it. 3 weeks later, I had a one-way ticket to Frankfurt in my bag, departing in 48 hours. My sublease was ended. My storage unit was paid up for 6 months. Everything I was taking to Germany fit into one large checked bag and a carry-on. The only thing left on my calendar before the flight was Grandpa Vaughan's 80th birthday dinner, held at his house on a Thursday evening. About 15 people were there. My parents, Declan, 2 of my aunts and uncle, a few of Grandpa Vaughan's old colleagues and neighbours. The house was warm and crowded, and there was food on every surface, and people were talking over each other the way families do at these things. No one in that room, other than Grandpa Vaughan, knew about the Fulbright. No one knew I was leaving in 2 days. My mother found me within the first 10 minutes and asked what my plans were now that I had graduated. She said I should think about coming back to Washington, that it would be good to be near family, that there were plenty of jobs in the area for someone with my degree. My father joined the conversation and suggested that I might be useful helping Declan with his academics, since he was starting to think about college applications, and I understood the process well. I listened to both of them. I nodded. From across the room, Declan looked up from his phone and said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear, "Hey Ilara, now that you've got your degree and everything, you think you could lend me some money? I want to get a new amp." A few people near him laughed, assuming it was a joke between siblings. Grandpa Vaughan, standing a few feet away, did not laugh. He looked at me steadily. About an hour into the evening, one of Grandpa Vaughan's longtime neighbours, a woman named Miriam, turned to me during a lull in the general noise and asked in a conversational tone what I was planning to do after graduation. She said she had heard from Vaughan that I had done very well academically, and she was curious. I looked at Miriam, then I looked at Grandpa Vaughan, who gave me the smallest nod, barely a movement, but I saw it. I set my glass down on the table next to me. I said, "I actually have some news I have been waiting to share with my grandfather on his birthday. I think now is a good time." The nearby conversations tapered off. My mother turned toward me. My father stopped mid-sentence in whatever he had been saying to my uncle. I said, "I have been awarded a Fulbright scholarship. It is a federal academic fellowship, and it is one of the most competitive research awards in the country. I will be conducting a 2-year research fellowship at the University of Heidelberg in Germany. The total value of the award is over $500,000. I leave in 48 hours. The room was completely silent. My mother opened her mouth. My father put his drink down on the nearest surface. Before either of them could speak, I continued. My voice did not rise. I was not performing anger. I was stating facts. I said, "I also want Grandpa Vaughan to know, since he was not able to hear this at the time, that he was the only family member present at my graduation. 3 chairs were empty. He drove 2 hours in stopped highway traffic and arrived late, and he was still the only one who came. I wanted him to hear that acknowledged out loud in front of people who love him." My mother said, "Ilara, we were going to watch it on the live stream. We thought you would understand that the party had already been planned for months, and we could not just cancel on everyone. And we did watch the ceremony. We were watching when you were speaking, and we were so proud. You have to believe that we were proud." She said all of that in one breath. I let it finish. Then I said, "Over 4 years of college, I worked 3 jobs at the same time to pay for my own tuition, rent, textbooks, and food. I did not ask for help. I did not receive any. I graduated first in my class, gave the commencement address, and received a fellowship that will take me to one of the best research universities in Europe. I am not saying this to hurt anyone. I am saying it because it is true, and because the people in this room deserve to hear the truth." Declan had put his phone face down on the coffee table. He was watching me with an expression I had not seen on him before. My father stood up from his chair. He said, Ilara, this is not the right time or place for this conversation. There are guests here and this is your grandfather's birthday, and I think if you just take a breath and step outside for a minute, we can all talk about this privately. I looked at my father, then I said, you are right that this is Grandpa Vaughan's birthday. That is exactly why I am saying it now. Because this is the one night I know he is surrounded by people who care about him, and I want him to hear this before I leave. I fly out in 2 days. After that, I do not know when I will be in this room again. I picked up the book I had brought for my grandfather. It was a hardcover edition of a travel memoir he had mentioned once, years ago, wanting to read but never getting around to. I had ordered it 6 weeks before. I walked to where he was standing near the kitchen doorway. I put the book in his hands. He held it carefully, the way you hold something you understand the weight of. I put my arms around him and held on. He held on too. Neither of us said anything. Then I stepped back, looked at my parents one more time and said, I hope we can have a real conversation someday. Tonight is not that night. I picked up my jacket from the hook near the front door and I walked out. I did not slam the door. I did not look back over my shoulder. I walked down the porch steps and out to where my Uber was already waiting at the curb, and I got in, and I went home to finish packing. I am 34 years old. I am sitting in my office at the University of Heidelberg on a Tuesday morning, and outside my window the city is doing what it always does, going about its business without asking my permission. Rue, my cat, is sitting on the corner of my desk the way he does every morning, watching the street below with complete indifference to my work. 12 years have passed since I walked out of my grandfather's house with my jacket under my arm. In that time, my research has been published in 3 peer-reviewed international journals. I completed my 2-year Fulbright fellowship and was offered a permanent research position at Heidelberg, which I accepted. I have presented my work at conferences in 6 countries. Dr. Voss, who retired 4 years ago, still sends me emails with articles he thinks I will find useful. His subject lines are always just the title of the article with no greeting, which is exactly how I would expect him to communicate, and I find it deeply reassuring every time. About a year after I arrived in Heidelberg, I met a researcher named Petra, who studies sociolinguistics and speaks 4 languages and makes the best potato soup I have ever eaten. She became my closest friend here. She is the kind of person who notices things without being asked to notice them, and that has mattered more than I can easily explain. The first month after I left was quiet on the family front. Declan sent me one message about 3 weeks after the birthday dinner. It said, "Hey, I wanted to say sorry about the amp thing. That was not cool of me." I read it, thought about it for 3 days and wrote back, "Thank you for saying that. It was not much, but it was real, and real mattered more to me than elaborate." In the second month, my mother started seeing a therapist. I found out through Grandpa Vaughan, who mentioned it in an email without editorializing. "Your mother has started talking to someone professionally. I thought you should know." I read that sentence several times. I did not know exactly what to do with it, but I held on to it. 4 months after I arrived in Germany, Declan got a part-time job at a coffee shop on weekends. Nobody asked him to, he just decided to do it. Grandpa Vaughan told me in a phone call, and at the end he said, "I think your brother is learning something, Ilara. Slowly, but he is learning." I appreciated that Grandpa Vaughan said slowly. He had never been a person who overclaimed things. 6 months after I left, my father sent me an email. It was 4 paragraphs long. He wrote that he knew he had been wrong. He wrote that he did not have a clean explanation for why he had prioritized the way he had for so many years, only that he had convinced himself the imbalance was not as significant as it was, and that he understood now that he had been wrong about that. He wrote that he was not expecting me to respond with forgiveness, and that he was not writing to ask for it. The last line of the email said, "I just needed you to know that I understand now. I am sorry, Ilara." I read that email 3 times over the course of a day. That evening I wrote back. My reply was shorter than his letter. It said, "Thank you for writing this. I am going to need more time, but I read every word." That exchange was not a resolution. It was a beginning of something that moved very slowly and with a lot of silence between the steps. My mother and I began speaking on the phone every 2 weeks. The calls were not always easy. There were conversations where one of us said something that landed wrong, and there were silences that took a few calls to work through. But they were honest, and that was more than we had ever managed when I lived 20 minutes away. My father and I took longer, we still take longer, but we are not at zero. Grandpa Vaughan died 3 years after I moved to Germany. He was 83 years old. He had a stroke in his sleep and did not wake up, which is the kind of ending that people who knew him said was fitting for a man who never wanted to make a fuss. I flew home for the service. I stood at the front of a small funeral home and spoke about him for 8 minutes, and I did not use a single note because everything I said had been sitting in me for years, waiting. In his will, Grandpa Vaughan left me a sealed envelope. Inside was a photograph. It was a picture taken when I was about 10 years old at his kitchen table. I was laughing at something, mouth wide open, clearly mid-sentence. He was sitting across from me, watching me with the expression of someone who finds what they are looking at genuinely wonderful. On the back of the photograph, in his handwriting, he had written, "This is my favorite version of you. Do not lose her." I keep that photograph on my desk, next to my monitor, next to the picture of me in my graduation gown standing alone. I look at both of them sometimes when I am between tasks, or when a day is harder than expected, or when I just need to remember where I came from and how far that actually is from where I sit right now. I did not lose her. She is the one who packed one bag, got on a plane, and never stopped moving forward. She is the one who stood at a podium in front of 5,000 people with 4 empty chairs in the second row and delivered every word of that speech without flinching. Her name is Ilara. She is a researcher. She lives in Heidelberg, and she is exactly where she is supposed to be. If this story hit something real for you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me. Has there ever been a moment when the people who were supposed to show up simply did not? What did you do next? I read every comment and I genuinely want to know. If you made it to the end of this story, please hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds and it means more than you might think. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, stories about starting over, about choosing yourself, about building something real out of something painful, subscribe to this channel. There is more coming. And I do not want you to miss it. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know who is watching with 4 empty chairs in the second row and waiting to be told that they are going to be all right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening all the way through. Whatever you are carrying right now, I hope this story reminded you that the distance between where you are and where you are supposed to be is something you are allowed to cross on your own terms.